everyone. My name is Kate Barutha. I'm the Interim Assistant Director of University Arts here at the Logan Center, and we are so pleased to have you here today. Since the Logan Center opened in 2012, we've had the privilege of welcoming to our many various stages some of the greatest jazz musicians from Chicago and beyond. We have a wonderful season of jazz and blues programming happening here all year long. So please pick up this calendar when you see it. It's got all of our jazz programs. There's about 30 between student jazz performances, performances with the AACM and the Bridge. There's a variety of things, so pick that up. And also, if you'd like to be on our mailing list to learn more, there's one on your way out at the north entrance. We hope that the Logan Center is becoming an important home for jazz and blues on the South Side, and so we are so thankful to be able to partner with the Hyde Park Jazz Festival. And so to learn more about the Jazz Festival, I'd like to introduce Rahsaan Clark Morris to tell you more about the festival and the great experience that you're about to see. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Kate. Well, I just want to welcome everybody to this is our 13th annual Hyde Park Jazz Festival. My name is Rahsaan Clark Morris, as Kate said. I'm a DJ at WHPK, Sunday DJ, by the way. Richard Steele comes on just before me at 2 o'clock. I come on at 4. But before we begin this discussion, I'd like to remind everyone to respect the panelists. I don't see any cameras here, but anyway, I'll say, please, no flash photography. This panel is being recorded, for your information, by CAN TV, Public Access TV. So in the mid-1950s, Jazz in the Alley emerged as a community gathering in the alley between 49th and 50th at St. Lawrence in Bronzeville, just a little northwest of here. The weekly events convened DJs, musicians, neighbors to enjoy music, food, drink, and community. Among the community members at that time, the late poet and musician Dr. Sidar Weber, and saxophonist Jimmy Ellis, Little Sax Ellis, and others. When Jazz in the Alley was closed down after nearly 30 years, DJs and later members of the now inactive Jazz Junction began playing records at neighborhood establishments that allowed alley DJs to continue spinning jazz. Other iterations of the original concept, most notably Universal Alley Jazz Jam that continues at the Black United Front Plaza on East 71st Street, they continue today. Some of the people who participated in the various DJ jams, including the first women DJs, discussed the history and significance of these much celebrated convenings. This panel will be moderated by musician and great singer and community historian, Maggie Brown. She will introduce the panelists to you. Please welcome the ladies and gentlemen of jazz.
Love you, dear. Thank you so much. Hey, everybody. Hey. Welcome to the 13th annual. I hope some of y'all came from seeing the wonderful Angel Bat Dawi. I know it was powerful. I got to see the tape. Yep, but I'm very glad to be a part of this. I was fortunate to be at the first Back Alley Jazz that was produced not this summer, but summer before last in 2018. And we just took over Paxton and 76th, 73rd and Paxton, 4 different yards. And I understand that it happened again this year with a different, as we said, iteration, but this time featuring the DJs, the folks who spun the records. And if anybody knows anything about Jazz in the Alley as it's historically known, that's where it started, right? It started in the garage of a man that they finally called Pops. So what I want to do is let you know that we are joined now by folks who either actually were spinning during those days at the Jazz in the Alley or that have since taken on through, tell me again, it's called the Jazz, what's it that's on your flyers? Jazz, that's called the Jazz Exchange? No. What's it called? You just mentioned it, Rahsaan. Oh, the junction, right. So folks continued on through the junction. Everyone on the stage, except for me, went there somewhat regularly at some point in their life, I think. Don't let them tell you, oh, I just stopped in a couple times. Sundays, they were there. So won't you please help me welcome to my left immediately, Miss Emma Machen, is it Machen? Miss Emma Machen, okay. Thank you. And on the far end, I'm doing ladies first, Miss Maxine Parson. Next to Maxine would be Mr. Bill Jarvis. Yep. And next to him is his neighbor, Arthur Gillespie. Yep. And with the wonderful mudcloth hat is Ed Eubanks. And then one of the original little Michael Evans, I heard they used to call you. That's Michael Evans there with the baseball cap and a mic in his hand. So what we're going to do is just start conversing and remembering and filling in those of us like me who've heard the legends of what was Jazz in the Alley, and then just learn more about what it is and maybe what we can do to increase that kind of activity in our world today. So once again, for everybody on the panel, we'll just go right on. So what I read, of course, I had to do a little studying, although my father, Oscar Brown Jr., had talked a lot about what used to happen there, and he was dear friends with a man named Ketan Mitchell, and we'll talk more about him. But I know that there were jazz battles that would take place in Pop's garage. That's how it started off on Sunday afternoons. He'd open up the garage, and they'd have the Sunday afternoon jazz set. Eventually, what started out with DJs competing, sort of trying to compete against each other and one-up each other, once a month, a man named Jimmy Ellis, a great musician named Jimmy Ellis, started hosting a live jam session. So that brought the live music. And I know my father, Oscar Brown, started coming, so the poets started coming. And I know that eventually C. Sid However describes how he talked Ketan Mitchell, the fine muralist, to please come and do some art on the side of Pop's garage. So by now you had this multimedia happening that welcomed the community. And it was something that grew and grew and grew. And as Mr. Rassan noted, it lasted about 30 years because it started in the 50s and it wasn't shut down by the city until more like the 80s. So we just want to remember some of the good things and how, if I could go down the line and ask a quick, how did you interact with what we know as Jazz in the Alley? By the way, where did it take place? Do we know? Between 49th and 50th. And then between St. Lawrence and, is it Champlain? Between Champlain and St. Lawrence, between 50th and 49th, there was this here alley where Mr. George would play this music, and it gathered people. First, the cats just probably came around, and folks started dancing, and more DJs wanted to show that they could do better than the last one, and it just became a thing that grew to, you all, you know, they say a couple thousand people could be there on a summer day by the time it was closing. So let's talk about it, Miss Emma. What brought you to Jazz in the Alley back in the day?
Well.
Yep, please take that
I'm
mic.
sorry. Thank you.
Take your time.
I forgot all about the mic.
That's all right.
It was something unique. It had started with one or two, DJs being there and everything, and then they just started talking, and everybody started coming around and having a good time. There was also a lounge there called the Spanish Village, and we would be inside dancing and playing music, and people would be outside in the alley. So we would start dancing in the alley. We'd leave the lounge and go outside.
So maybe this would be the alley, but right around the front was the storefront
go right
called. What'd you
out
say?
the
What it
door.
was called?
Yeah, around the corner. To the alley. And so we just had
Spanish.
It was just like a community thing. Everybody was doing what they like to do and being with their friends and just sitting around. People would sit on the porch and listen to the music and watch people dance and see who's coming. So, did so-and-so coming tonight? Yeah, they'll be here. Okay, let's dance. So, we'd be out there. And it was just a good time, just having a good time.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, what about you, Mr. Michael Evans? What brought you to the alley?
Well, I had a buddy named Butterball.
Butterbone?
Butterball.
Butterball.
He was a DJ.
Okay.
And he the one took me down there. And I just got really hooked on it because I love jazz, I love music, I love to play.
How old were you at that time? About, were you a teenager?
Wow, no.
Not even.
I must have been early 20s.
Okay.
Yeah, because like over, you know. But anyway, when I went in, it was just, the camaraderie was so nice. People was enjoying it, having a good time. And I said, well, there's something I wanted to involve myself in. So I got me some equipment. I went down there and I asked could I play. And by me being a rookie on the block, they laughed at me until I got on the stage.
Oh.
And everybody started looking instead of laughing.
Okay. Turn
So-
those laughters into looks.
So it was a difference, but you would have so much fun. People would leave church, come to the alley with all their church attire on, ladies with their big hats, mink coats in the wintertime.
Okay.
And you sitting up in a huge
Sunday
garage.
best. Yeah. Isn't they Sunday best?
And we're battling, and I love battling the best because that made me better.
That's right.
So guys like Pops, Gene Page, guys like that, I would love. Coop used to have Coop's records.
Oh, I remember Coop's records.
Right,
Sure.
I hated to play Coop
Ooh.
because he had all the music in the world.
Right.
So,
He wasn't short on no music.
right, and he would sit there and chew on that cigar and be wearing me out for a while. But it was really, really nice, and I enjoyed it. And I'm sorry that Jane Burns shut us down.
I know. We're going to come back and find out why they called you Lil Mike. And right now, let's hear from Bill Jarvis. No, that's Ed Eubanks. Excuse me, from Ed Eubanks is who we're going to hear from. How you came to be at the alley.
Well, basically, I came because as a jazz lover, and it was free. And that was the biggest motivation for me.
Okay.
It was all the greatest music in the world, and you didn't have to pay. Yeah. And a few young ladies that I had met would come all the time because I lived in Gary, Indiana, where I grew up. But I would come to Chicago to all the jazz entertainment spots on the South Side, especially. But free was the motivation to come.
Okay. Did you spin, or were you more of a participant in an onlooker?
I just got into that later. Basically, when growing up in Gary, the fellows that I admired were jazz fans, and they would all gather and bring their music to play each other. And being one of the few little guys that they would allow to even hang around with them, I would come and listen to the music, and they would argue, and they would say, "Well, you don't know what you don't know anything about jazz. Lil Ed know more than you."
Okay.
But I had to come up with the artist. If they would say, "Who is that Lil Ed?" They would give me the album, and I would read the album cover, and so later in school, I if I had to do a book report, I would do it from the album covers I'd already read.
Teachers were getting jazz reports, huh?
Right.
That's a wonderful thing.
Right. And so it's always been something I've entertained and had fun doing, and the fact that it was famous for as far away as Indianapolis. People would come up from Indianapolis to Chicago to those, and a lot of people wouldn't know that there would be out of towners there because all you had to do was just love music. It was a gathering of people who love music. Yeah.
While we're at it, how many people here in the audience now ever went to Jazz in the Alley, the original one that was between 49th and 50th, St. Lawrence and Champlain? It's a beautiful thing. We're going to let Brother Arthur Gillespie, is that right? Can we
that's
have
correct.
Arthur hear
That's
about
correct.
what brought you to and what kind of activities were you doing at the Jazz in the Alley?
Well, I had an auntie that was a jazz fanatic. She played music all the time.
Okay.
Introduced me to Alma Jamal, Sonny Stitt, to Gene Ammons. So I got a chance to learn early. When I came out of service in 1961,
my brother-in-law, who was John Stroger at the time, opened up a club on 36th and State Street called Yanni's. And I played there. And it just went on and on.
Spinning records. When you say you played, you were spinning records, okay.
Spinning records, yeah. And Bill Jarvis and I went to high school together.
Okay.
And I think we graduated together, too. And we just started hanging out together. Next thing I know, I'm at his house all the time with him and his brother Ted and Paul, and we played music.
Mm-hmm. Ted, Bill, and Paul Jarvis, huh?
Right, right.
Y'all used to hang.
Right.
Y'all are buddies almost from the sandbox. That's
That's
good.
right.
Mm-hmm.
On 154 on 43rd and State Street.
43rd and State. So y'all would walk over, of course, unless you
Yeah.
took your bike. But yeah.
We had good times back in those days.
Let me hear from your buddy down there, Mr. Bill Jarvis. Did you spin records at the alley?
No, but I was there every Sunday. though.
You was faithful.
Yes, I was there every Sunday.
Oh, we need the faithful listeners and followers and admirers and people participating from that side too. So that's great. Tell us about what it was like.
It was beautiful. I mean, everybody was there, and you friends. You just had fun and talked. But I started listening to jazz. You remember Marty Faye?
Yeah, I do.
That's when I was listening to Marty Faye. And from then on, I kept growing. And my first album I bought, I must have been about 13 or 14, was by Buck Clayton, Robin's Nest. And I never will forget it. It was an 18-minute long cut.
18 minutes
we played
long?
it. Huh?
You said 18 minutes or 8 minutes long?
No, it was 18 minutes.
18 minutes.
Yeah, it was just one whole side of the album.
Okay.
But before that, I was buying 78, the little small records.
Talking about the
78.
45? Oh, the 78 and the 45.
Do you remember the 78?
Yeah, I got some.
Okay, so I've been playing music for the longest, and I love it.
All right. What about Miss Maxine? Can we hear from you, Miss Parsons?
Yes, indeed. My first experience with jazz was my love for Charlie Parker.
Oh.
I love Bird.
Charlie Parker. The music.
And so Bill Jarvis and I are relatives. And I would go to his house and we would play music. Everybody's house we went to had jazz. And on Sundays, you would put on your Sunday best and go to the alley.
Okay.
And dance like there was no tomorrow.
Ooh-wee.
And sometimes people would get drunk now.
Okay.
And they would be outside throwing up.
Oh, dear.
And when they finished, they would go back in the alley and start all over again. So we had a good time.
my
And
goodness.
I'm like Mike, Jane Burns shut us down. And
but a
we
shame.
were so angry, and seems like after that, there were no more clubs for us to go to.
We're going to talk about that fact because we were talking earlier before everybody came in about the fact that I was somebody might have seen me on the L train. They did this project called the Soul L, and last week myself and others took turns performing on a CTA Green Line. And it was, people Facebook Lived it. And on my way to that event, a European gentleman was in town, and he said, well, I'd like to know where the jazz clubs on the South Side, where can I go hear some jazz on the South Side? How come I had to draw a blank? How come a blank? I couldn't even say, well, room 43 on Sunday. Well, no, in another month or so, we'll be back up at the promontory. But Lee's unlet. Nope, I heard they're closed down. And what about the Brown Derby? No. Nothing? No regular place for jazz and blues on the South Side? Ooh, that's sabotage right there, y'all. Okay, we're going to talk about that later. But right now, let's just talk about the fact that, okay, there was the thing started out with DJing and competing. And then you had a Jimmy Ellis that eventually one day must have busted out his saxophone. And then started inviting his musical instrumental friends to come. And once a month, they say, it would be that live music feature. And I know my father, being a poet, eventually he came and started busting a rhyme back then and was close to Mr. Ketan Mitchell. Ketan Mitchell, who was a great muralist, a great artist. Ketan and his wife Betty were friends of my mother and father and lived very near to us. And I knew that we had great pieces of art in our house and that these were Ketan's pieces. But it wasn't until I got older and discovered the wonderful murals that really, they just inspired you. They just gave Black culture and who we are life to me, having these murals. So can we talk about, there's some images that I saw online that I invite you all to please find. It was like through Google, this wonderful series, and it kind of showed the best picture that I had seen of the mural that Dr. Sidha Weber, he said he talked Ketan into doing it. Ketan didn't really feel like doing it, but he talked him into it, and then the young people would start helping and wanting to do it too. And it just helped to grow, just like the music from the records. Do you all remember the mural? Or was anybody there when it was being constructed, possibly? You remember? Is that Brother Feynman out there? Yeah. And you were there when they were doing that? Did you pick up a paintbrush?
I don't remember painting, but I was there when they dedicated the. The title of the mural was called "Rip Off."
Rip Off, I remember, and he said that he and Ketan and Sidha, Sidha wanted to call it Universal Alley, but he said no, Rip Off, because of the way things get ripped off. Yeah, but boy, I think that it's a rip off for that wall not to be up still. I mean, it was beautiful and really should have been preserved. So this original alley was between 49th and 50th Streets, between St. Lawrence and Champlain. And that's the side. Y'all, was it on the wall or was it on Pop's actual garage? It was just along the alley where the hangout was. It was quite long. And I just saw, I guess I saw a color image. Again, go online because it's really something. And then this pictorial thing had a lot of the images of people standing in front of this same mural to give a closer look at some of the words that Sidha always wrote his poetry in there. He said that Ketan said he'll do the painting, but Sidha wanted to do the poetry. And, just I think what maybe started out as something just what we do. We're social. We hang out. We like to be together. But it just grew into something it was kind of like a church, I'm sure, like a spiritual thing where we could peacefully and joyfully come together on a Sunday, meet new people, see your old friends, and jam and groove and, feel the vibe. Would you say do I have about a, go for it.
That's exactly what it was. Like I said, we went to this club on 43rd and State, the 154, on Sundays too. And the DJs would play some of the greatest music you have ever heard.
Yeah. The club Rum Boogie.
We also had Memory Lane on 43rd Street.
Is that right?
We keep forgetting about that place.
Was Club 113 around in that time, or that came later? It was around during that
That's
time.
on 47.
Yeah, my father used to tell me about a lot of places. There used to be a lot of clubs and joints and
lot
spots.
of them.
Brown Derby.
Yeah.
Rum Boogie. Sutherland.
The music box.
Take that so we can all hear. Go ahead.
My niece, she's sitting in the audience here. She was about 6 months old. And we used to go around to the Brown Derby. You didn't go in blue jeans and a jacket and a cap.
No.
You wore your hat, your gloves,
Ooh.
your high-heeled shoes, your silk hose. You were dressed to the nines. And that was at 51st Street between Indiana and Prairie at that time. And it was a wonderful, beautiful club. Everybody loved to go there. You would sit in there. You had the waiters were in full uniform. I mean, it was just like downtown. Really, it was a beautiful spot, and everybody liked to go there and say, "Well, meet me at the Derby." Now they have. I understand. I haven't been there, but on Prairie, where it used to be the Elks.
So yes, the Great
Hall.
Lakes Elks Lodge is the edifice, and then my good friend Sandra Bivens and Mr. Robert, who owns is co-owner at least of that building with the Elks Lodge. They had been running for years, been trying to get people to come every Thursday to what's called the Brown Derby, bringing that vibe back. But the place is a little run down and Folks ain't dressing up to come out anymore. As you were saying, I was like, oh, maybe if we're all dressed up real fancy, and then when the audience came, they'd feel like, oh, let me come back here. This is really nice or something. Because I know the struggles of just trying to, oh, no, it's too dangerous. And it's like, but it's right by the L. As soon as you get off, it's right there. We'll look out for your parking. It's like, but no, the neighborhood is just whatever it is. It's just very hard. Very hard to catch on and to recreate this vibration that we're still celebrating because it was so powerful back in those days. And it lasted for a long time, almost 30 years, this Jazz in the Alley activity was going on. Anybody want to talk about what happened? Where are the albums that you used to play? The Gene Ammons and all that
Oh,
good
we
stuff?
have
Sonny
them all.
Stitt. Y'all still had the albums?
Oh, I got
Have 'em
mine.
all.
Okay.
Oh, well, I'll tell you something else that I did. I played at most of the Roberts motels.
Robert's Motel.
I played at the on 63rd. I played in the 300 room. Me and Guitar Red. Well, Guitar Red would play earlier, and I would come on after him. I would play jazz. And once a month, I would give free, I wouldn't charge. All the seniors in the community, we go to the 500 room, and I would play jazz for 3 hours for them for free.
Would they get up and dance?
Sure they would.
Of course.
And
part of it.
it was just something that I wanted to do I was younger then. Now I'm a senior and won't nobody play nothing for me.
Bring it back.
But it's just something that I always wanted to do, and I had an opportunity to do it. So I played at the one on 63rd, Roberts on 79th, 37th, 63rd. I played all of them, and I spent a lot of years in the show clubs over there, just playing music.
And somebody told me a little something that I wouldn't know, and no one would know, but that through this work, because of course in the alley, I bet y'all wasn't getting no money. Were you getting paid?
Well, let me tell you.
No, but they just let me know that you actually sent through 2 young ladies through college through your work doing this DJ.
Well, yeah, I put my daughters through college doing this. But what happened, helped not just me.
Right.
Their mothers helped too.
Of course.
Because, and not just me. But I had to give them their props.
That's right.
But, it was, I enjoyed it, and I still enjoy it. And I wish we could find somewhere where we could all go and kind of, I know it's a lot, the thing about it is a lot of us are gone now.
True that.
Yeah.
That's the key, that's the problem. Every time, we go to more funerals, we don't go to weddings, we go to funerals. So
Yeah, let me see that.
we be going to funerals like every week or every other week we going to somebody's funeral.
Miss Emma brought a picture showing how a couple of years ago when celebrating her birthday that this was a gathering of DJs and folks who would spin, and you count about 5.
4 of them on that
Four
day.
on that picture, 1 woman and 3 other gentlemen are no longer even with us. And so, that's where we are. We're on that beach where we take 60 some odd years to reach usually, and and more we're going to funerals.
Right, well, this is the thing, if we could just get someplace in a centrally located area and do an early set. Like me, I like doing the early sets, like 4 to 9. At 10 o'clock, you got your pajamas on, watching the 10 o'clock news.
That's right.
Home in time for the news. Love it.
So, whatever channel you want to look at.
Oh,
But if we could do that and get the camaraderie back, and because we love jazz, we love music, that's where we came from. My father was a musician. He played with Gene. Gene Ammons come to my house all the time. Arthur and Red Pricelock. Arthur Pricelock got me eating chitlins today. So, cause my mom cooked something and I didn't know what they was. I said, Mom, what's that? She said, chitlins. I said, that's what he eating? I said, let me try them. Well, I've been hooked ever since.
Uh-oh.
But I'm just saying, he played at the Club de Lisa. I used to go down there and set his drums up for him. And when it burned down on one side and they moved to the other side of the street, I was still doing it. So, I've been around music all my life, and I would love to hear more jazz than, this so-called music they got out here today.
Right, because jazz has class, and that's why the Jazz Junction helps keep
Exactly.
things going on. You're going to get a mic. So the Jazz Junction, we're going to, please hold your thought, but just the Jazz Junction was somewhat of a continuation. So once the yucky powers that be closed it down, and you had to find some place to be somebody, as my dad would always say. And so, like East of the Rhine, I'm looking at some of the old vintage flyers for East of the Rhine, the Jazz Junction. And there's a set list for when there was big band night? That's what I'm looking at? Some of the set lists of what you would play, like Satin Doll and Fat Man and Killer Joe and Midnight Sun, and Divas Night. We're going to talk about the fact that I heard, it's Miss Emma that fought for the fact that, how come it's only men's up there doing the DJing when they don't love music or jazz more than any other body? So I understand that you were a supporter of helping them to recognize that women can play and spin just as well. So you had on Divas Night, Man Old World. So then that meant you played all female singers? Everything. Mm-hmm. That's right. Maxine, since we're talking about the women, then we're going to come back to you, Brother Gillespie.
Well, I started playing jazz at 17 in a bar on 40th and Vincennes called
You was
The
too young
Hole.
to get in. The Hole? They called it The Hole.
The Hole.
The Hole, okay.
And my brother-in-law right here, Mr. Jarvis, can tell you, they called me Little Miss Hi-Fi. And I went from there to Rice's on 63rd Street. And one night, Jimmy Watts said, we having a battle tonight. And so you're going to have to play some music. And this guy from the West Side is coming. And I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. But I had just got a new album by Zoot Sims.
Uh-oh.
My man got up there and he played his little music and everything. So I was the last to play. And I played Brushes. I warmed out. I warmed out.
Gained
They
your place.
was like, who is that? And I say, it's the baddest white boy that sound like Lester Young you ever heard. And they gave me a standing ovation.
Wow.
And Jimmy said, now you don't have to be scared of nobody.
Okay.
You can play against anybody you want to.
All right.
So that was how I began after seeing Charlie Parker at 9 years old.
Mm-hmm.
That was my beginning.
Parker fan.
Yes.
What you want to say, Mr. Gillespie? Did I mess up with the thought?
No, in the early 70s, we opened up a club on 75th and Rose called Into.
Into?
Into.
Yeah, I
Into
remember
Theater
that.
Bar. We sold health food drinks in the daytime.
Yeah.
Played jazz at night. And I was a DJ, I was a bartender and the DJ at the same time, and the announcer of the shows.
Okay.
And we had Pharoah Sanders, we had Louis Jordan, we had part of Earth, Wind and Fire, some of the guys from Earth, Wind and Fire. So I enjoyed those years.
I bet. What makes you think why do you think, what do you think led to it being closed down? Anybody have any feelings about what led to the Jazz in the Alley that we know between 49th and 50th? Get that mic and tell us.
My understanding, it was a young lady outside around by Spanish Villa.
Mm-hmm.
She was shopping. She was coming home with her bags. Some guys came and robbed her. And some of the other guys was out front, but they didn't do anything.
To help.
And she reported it to the police and got back to Jane Byrne. And then that caused her to shut us down. And it wasn't even in the alley. It was around the corner.
Right.
So she just assumed that we was having problems, but we never had one problem in the alley, not one.
As it grew and went from being just a few cats coming by and then them and their friends, and then it got to points where people say there could have been thousands, or at least 1,000 people gathered all around.
What amazed me is we had straight guys on one end,
and the gay community,
on the back end. You had guys doing their little herb in the middle, whatever,
right.
But everybody had a great time.
Right.
Nobody, it was never no fight, never an argument.
There were cliques, but no conflicts.
Every Sunday, and people people almost live to come to the alley on Sundays.
That's
Sure,
right.
Like I said, I'm sure it's a spiritual experience.
Yeah, they just
So yeah,
live.
someone said how the gay community expressed that they felt they could feel less inhibited. They could just
Yeah.
feel freer to be themselves and to enjoy the music and be with community and maybe not looked on as stigmatized as certainly things were in the 60s and 70s. We were not anywhere where we are now with transgender Barbie dolls or none of that stuff, right? So
No.
so. Yeah, it was way different. But you're saying they coexisted nicely, and even though the straight guys like, okay, I'm not over there because they're not with my program, but everybody could operate.
Yeah, you had Wilbur Hi-Fi White.
Yes, indeed.
You had
Yeah,
what? You
man.
said what?
Wilbur Hi-Fi White.
Well, who's that? I wasn't there. Who's Wilbur Hi-Fi White?
He was a
Chicago's
gay guy,
most
gay guy that was a
infamous
dancer,
gay person.
dancer and a comedian.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. All right, y'all remember Sandman? I know of him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some of his art is still around. He would
Mm-hmm.
take what was the rubbish and refuse from people's lives sometimes and create crowns and would clean up, just constantly clean up, get the kids to clean up in the neighborhood and had a beautiful voice. But wait a
He
minute,
rolled through
I
the
heard he
neighborhood
could
singing
blow.
all the time.
Yeah, I heard he could blow, but did any of y'all see the Sandman do the thing at the Rum Boogie where he would put 5 stacked tables and chairs in his mouth and balance them?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you heard of it.
Universe Soul, look out. The early days of Universe Soul, right? Who's got a picture of that? Oh, there's so many things that we are fortunate now, y'all. And make
Yeah.
sure you document and copy and take a picture and roll the camera. Get your young people to start their little iPhone when you're doing things and talking about this history because it's a blessing to have the stories and to be able to communicate the memories that we're sharing now. But so often, like with my father, we have musical plays that were fabulous, and folks just didn't have cameras then, or didn't realize, or let somebody borrow the last VHS tape and you never got it back.
That's right.
So now we can digitize it and put it online and have stuff in a few places. I just was able to document. There's a big effort to document and digitize our stories, our history, our memories, and our memorabilia. So Smithsonian was in town. The African American History Museum was in town, and they were at DuSable, and they were at Chicago State, and they were out in Evanston. And they're still doing a little something. And my sister and I did go, and we got a bunch of pictures and press clippings, all digitized, so that they're on the computer, they're on a thumb drive. We have the originals, but it's easier to share. It's easier to make something to tell our stories. And sometimes, especially when our young people maybe don't know what they want to do, because it's hard out here. It's easy to just float and not really understand what you should be about. And in those cases, we could put them on this task, like, hey, baby, I got these pictures. I need you to put them in the computer for me, and then we're going to make a story. And they'll know how to put it up on YouTube and everything else and share it at the next family reunion or the next DJ's reunion. And just see the importance, start building on the importance of telling our stories and recreating this history not because we just have to hold on to the past, but kind of bring along the beauty of it and the joy of it with us as times change as much as they have. They say, so do y'all still DJ with LPs, or have you had to go to CDs and start spinning with CDs like
Use
the young
both.
people?
Mostly CD.
You gotta do some CDs now, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you got to have what? You got to have 2 setups? You have to have a setup for records as well as CDs, or how do you do it?
That would be the case.
Yeah.
That would be the case.
Yeah, that would be the case.
So is there something going on right now that we could catch weekly or monthly anywhere? With any of y'all spinning or something?
No.
Check.
What?
Actually, it's a combination.
Okay.
Like you say, flash drives, hard drives.
Ooh.
I got thousands and thousands of songs on computer.
No. Okay.
And I also got my CDs. And I got my albums. It's just too much stuff.
To carry. It's a lot to carry around.
I don't carry.
Thumb drive, huh? It's got a USB.
No, I use a regular hard drive.
Okay.
But I play my wax in the house. But wax sounds so much better
It's a difference, huh?
than any of that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, you put an album on and then put it on a flash drive or a hard drive and play it. It's like night and day.
Night and day. Uh-huh.
Because you don't, you hear all that little
The crack.
crackling in the music. It's something about that.
I'm warm.
It's something about that that just kind of gets next to you. You know, even when you play a 45, you know it's going to be 2 minutes and 45 seconds, but it's 2 minutes and 45 seconds that you really, really like.
Okay.
You know, yeah, a lot different.
I got it all. I got 45s, I got LPs. I still got my LPs. I got about maybe 400 LPs, and I got CDs. I just got CDs, all kind of music. But I like music. I like the opera. I like the Nutcracker Suite. I like it all. But I prefer jazz, and I've been playing jazz for the longest. And I went to the big band. I like to hear the big bands too, and they be kicking, you know. And I listen to them, and I just look like I be right there with them.
You be kicking too, huh?
I swear I be kicking right there with them.
How many on the line have been able to pass it on to someone younger? Have had to serve as a mentor to some young person coming along learning how to do what you did? I'm listening, Maxine. We're listening.
Well, Maggie, you know my son, UCL, played with your brother, Bo.
Oh, see? I forget these
And
names.
yeah, and he played keyboards like Miles Davis Blue. And that was William Jarvis's nephew.
I see. Okay.
So, you know, Joe Biden said something the other day, just to break it up, that he was talking about black people and how to raise their children, and maybe they need to turn the radio on or something. He said,
Turn it on?
Yes, he did, but I'm not for the radio, but I'm for you playing some jazz music in your house.
Show them
So
what you
that
love.
your children will understand, because regardless of whether they say that's that old music, you know, our mothers would say, well, you can't go outside. So that means that they had to
You're gonna
stay in the
sit
house,
there and listen.
they would sit there
Don't
and
hear
listen to it, you know, because if they don't know it, they'll never learn it. It's real simple, you know, and if they don't play it, then all they know is what they know, you
All they
know.
know is what they're
because,
exposed to, right?
Yeah, we were taught, the girls in our neighborhood were taught, if you see a brother walking down the street, you look at his shoes. If he had on some Tom McAn's, he was out. You know, he had to have a bell hat on. William Jarvis can vouch for this. You had to have a bell hat on. You had to have some real shoes on. It was okay if you had some khakis on, but they had to be iron.
Iron and creased.
And you
Not
had to
come
have
out
a
the
nice
house looking
shirt
any old
on
way.
and a nice sweater.
Ooh, y'all must have a real hard time with the sagging factor.
Baby,
Because
please.
I do. And oh,
I
my
do.
goodness. I'll dress casual in a minute, but boy, that sagging is just wrong. Who else wants to say something about what Miss Maxine was talking about, that you've been able to hopefully pass this on, whether it's someone else in your family younger than you that now DJs or has asked for pointers or has gone into this music?
I think I failed because my grandkids, they know that I have a serious jazz collection, and they may even brag about that, but they don't listen to the music.
Right. Get them to play one, huh?
No, but they do dress.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I can say the guys their pants are pulled up.
Yes.
At least when I'm around. So they live in Milwaukee, and
respect.
when they know that I'm coming in town, everybody put on something presentable. Yeah.
That's because you passed it on.
Yeah, again, growing up in Gary, but going to a high school that primarily Chicago came most of the schools other than 2 or 3 of us who were from Gary had moved into this particular neighborhood. The Chicagoans that moved out of the projects into Gary. There was a housing development that you could buy a house for $10,000 in 1954 and 55. You couldn't buy a house in maybe Chatham or any of the neighborhoods that they were moving into. And so things have changed. And no one in Gary came to Chicago that wasn't dressed.
Okay.
Yeah, you didn't go.
Looking like
All right, and you had to have a hat on. Today you can find a place that will clean and block hats. It was every cleaners had that.
They had
facility.
to offer that service. That's right.
They had that service for you, because everyone dressed. No one went in. I don't care what you did for a living. When you were going to go to Chicago, you put your clothes on. Before you cross Illinois
Go
state
downtown.
line.
Just to go downtown. I remember you got dressed up. You didn't just go down there looking in an old kind of way. Who was George Harris? Who was George Harris? That name came up in the article that I was looking at with the wonderful picture.
George was the guy that had jazz at Jazz
he
Junction.
started the Jazz Junction idea. Where was that, y'all? Oh, that would be conducted east of the Rhine.
Right. Before
So would that
he-
not happen on Sundays, or would it also happen on Sundays?
Before that, he was at 79th Street.
Right, I remember when it was on 79th, not far from like Cottage, right? Yeah.
Right between Evans and Cottage.
And it was a whole little hotel, little thing, plus the room, right, where they would do things. No, it was just a banquet hall or something.
Just a little, it was the bar.
It was a bar. Okay. Who's Norman Spalding? Anybody remember that name?
No.
That was a DJ.
Oh. Now, would George Harris spin the records, or he just made sure that this thing was produced and when
He spent too.
He would spin. He would do. Yeah. Okay.
After we would leave the alley, we would go down to Miss Bonnie's lounge,
I figured it would.
and they would,
Miss Bonnie's.
they
Miss
would.
Bonnie's lounge.
Oh, it was just beautiful.
It's beautiful.
And we leave Miss Bonnie's around 2:00 and stop down
And
at
go
the
home? No.
apartment lounge.
Yeah.
Virgil Johnson was spinning down there, and he was
All night.
he
Sunday
was,
going into Monday, sir?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Virgil spent till
Virgil
4 or
was
5
our
o'clock in the
professor.
morning.
He was considered the professor.
Yes, that's why I
He was just
started
DJ spinning
because
what Scott Joplin was to ragtime. Okay, a professor.
He was the line of DJ.
Huh?
He lied so much you loved him, though.
He lied.
Oh, he lied.
The lioness DJ, this man said.
He was, but you gotta love him. Cause I tried to get some music from him. Cause he worked at Coop's Records,
Yes.
He told Tall Tale.
and I asked him about getting me a record, and every week it was at home on the dresser. I said, "Well, man, when you please get it off the dresser and bring it to the store," and just all the DJs knew that if you asked him something, he know you had it. He said he's gonna get it to you, but he never would.
Yeah, well, that kept you talking. Kept you.
But he was the funnest cat. And talking about Miss Bonnie's, like he said, we left the alley. If you didn't get to Miss Bonnie's before 8:30, you couldn't get a seat.
It was just gonna be crowded.
This was every Sunday, and they had like 5 DJs on Sundays every week. First week,
Raindrop.
no, that wasn't. No, Raindrop didn't play at Bonnie's. It was yeah. But anyway,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was definitely.
Second Sunday was Butterball. No, second Sunday was Boss Bob.
Little Earl.
Second Sunday was, third Sunday was Butterball. Fourth Sunday was me.
Congo Lynn.
Congo Lynn was the fifth Sunday. When we had 5 Sundays. But it was, and every Sunday, 8:30, if you wasn't there, you did not get a seat. But the men would get up and get the ladies a seat, of course.
Oh, okay.
But,
But if she was with her date, oh well.
well,
He had to stand up.
he would still stand up.
Okay. They let you in. You just couldn't.
All
see
the
'em.
gentlemen, they had a lot of gentlemen back in the day.
Yes.
They would give the ladies the seats
Certainly.
without asking. You don't have to ask. If they saw a lady standing up, they would get up and offer her the seat.
And that wasn't just.
What do
on
we
the
do to
south
not
side.
get
It
past
was
that
all over
on?
the
How
city.
did it get lost between y'all? And it wasn't lost so much on me, but certainly on the generations after that. Where did that go? What happened to that? Where did it go? And can we get it back?
Joints closed up.
No chance, eh?
I think that
Somebody asked me the other day about Into. They like to do that concept over again,
Yeah.
which was a beautiful spot, 75th and Rose.
What was your response?
I would, if I had some money, I'd open up a joint.
An into type of spot. You know, I think about it with my good friend. We talk about how we love to have a place that had a storefront and, you know, do something, be able to make it so that not only could I rehearse with my band, but I could present there and develop things there, and we could show art and have people come through and hang out, kind of like what this ended up being, you know.
Yeah.
But you're right, it takes capital. Takes capital and access to property to go ahead and get things started. And a lot of licenses, a lot of things that sometimes stop people. They don't want to have all the permits and the PPA plus the liquor license plus the something. You know, it takes a good deal. And there are those who said to me, like, because I knew my father, Jimmy Ellis, Howard Weber, you know, that actually there was no Chicago Jazz Festival downtown before this was closed down. And so it could be suggested that it became obvious that if you build it, they will come. And by shutting down the alley and starting to make it so that the happening was this one time a year deal that was produced by the city downtown, and that it's going to be jazz, but we're going to control the jazz, and you know when it happens and where it happens, and you know for the most part those have been free, which what this was. It was a free thing that you could do, but it really closed down things, and like you say, no spots, no venues, hardly, whether it be for live jazz or even just for a DJ to play at the bar. That just kind of dried up. But it is obviously it's up to us. It's not we've been waiting long enough to see it ain't nobody else gonna come and do it. So it's gonna be us that decides. Maybe collectively we have, not just you have to get one or I just have to get one, but maybe collectively we have to get one and start that one. Make that a success. And then build from there. And I always want to get my young people involved. It's not that they always cooperate, but I just feel like if we showed them success in our enterprises, that they would see that that's a route that they could take. Right, you know, that they could continue the culture and to continue to carry it on. A lyric I wrote in order to encourage young people, it says, ancient to the future. What we're doing is as old as it is new. Ancient to the future. Looking back helps us with what we've got to do. Ancient to the future. You don't diss it because it's coming from a time that's past. Check out your connection and try to help to make it last. And I think that's a lesson that we have to teach our young people. In another song, because I'm always trying to encourage this, I say, you know, my grandmother, you know, she'd tell me that she didn't want me being out there with the bad girls cussing and doing probably stuff in the alley that they was doing and stealing and everything. And I didn't want to hurt my grandma, you know. Not that I wouldn't hang out with the bad girls sometimes, but, you know, I would remember what she said because she would impart what was valuable to her. And we have to show them the music we love. And show them the appreciation we have for it and talk about it. And then, you got to sit down and listen to some of that, what they're listening to, and then talk about how, if these are the things that you want out of life, how do you get those? Oh, that's how you get those? Well, what did they just say? Oh, that don't sound like anything that would help you get to where you just said you wanted to go. And we got to break it down. Better stop waiting for somebody else to break it down.
I'm so glad that these young people picking up jazz
like downstairs, Isaiah and Angel and
Julius
all them.
Pierce,
Micaiah, all of them. That's right, Marquise Hill, all of them. The young lions, we love our young lions.
I fell in love with them. They're great.
They don't like
Corey Wilkes.
When we tell them, they're just this age. Of course, those guys, they're a little older now. You don't even help. But like I'm working with Canary Allison. I love saying this boy is 17, 18 years old playing like this. And they're like, you don't have to tell them my age. Oh, yes, we do, because we are proud. It encourages us. It makes us feel like the baton is being passed on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been great. This is, we're approaching our last final moments. I guess, was I supposed to give a chance for questions? Anybody have anything? You almost had your hand up for a minute. I took too long.
That was just something you said further back reminded me of the Art Bank. And you know the Art Bank?
The Arts Bank that's open now? The Stony Island Arts Bank? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a wonderful place. Yeah, there's a lot that gets done there. And it takes time. The Arts Incubator? Mm-hmm. Yep, starting to have the Green Line Theater.
Oh, that's fabulous.
Norman's, well, yes, there's Norman's is on Sunday nights on the later set. Mr. Dawkins does hold a jam session. Yeah. We lost room 43 for Sundays, but the folks of the Jazz Society will start being at the Promontory at the end of October on Sundays again, and there is still Norman's. And then the Quarry is on Fridays. And they might have the young man doing the blues on Mondays. So the Quarry is a really good place to support, y'all. That's on 75th Street. Boom, boom, boom. When that man asked me where's some jazz. But that night was like, it was a Friday. He could have gone there, I guess. But not at the moment. You know, he said, you know, like a bar. And they serve liquor at the Quarry, but it's not like the joints that we're remembering. Right. That were, you know, mainly a bar, but that this other component would come into it. And so Back Alley Jazz, which was first done summer before last, 2018, I had the blessing of being a part of that. And I know that part of its iteration then, and the one that you all helped participate in with the DJ feature this year, that it's about helping communities see that they can do this. Helping communities see that this can be done. We can get a permit to get the block closed down and get the neighbors to decide that, yep, and I'll let my yard be the yard, or maybe nobody's yard, maybe it's on the street. Get a food truck there. But just there is a process that can happen that would allow us to try to grow something as organic as the original alley was. Wouldn't it be?
Well, I've been finding out I'm going to these parties in the daytime now, seniors. And at 2 o'clock, I got on my after 5 stuff because they're really having a great set.
Okay.
Home by dark.
Uh-huh.
And I'm just thinking of all the buildings and places that we have. We can have this somewhere at least once or twice a week.
Okay.
You know?
That's a thought. Yeah, I've thought of offering that to the Quarry, like saying, okay, hey, let's do a daytime thing.
Yeah.
You know, I'd love to do a daytime thing where, and it could be the jam kind of thing. I can bring, I myself would probably have some kind of theatric. Daddy wrote a lot of stuff about the art of aging that's, you know, just poignant and just hip, you know, and it's like nice to share. Right. Have a meal and come together and you know, kind of jam like we used to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be great.
That would.
Well, having a place for, you know, early sets is good. But, you know, if you have it in the evenings, young people ain't coming in no jazz joint. They just ain't. They stand outside and say, oh, they playing that old people's music. We don't want to go in. They don't come. They don't come to blues joints. They just don't come. So as long as it's jazz and as long as it's blues, they'll participate. You know, we can have our fun and do what we want to do, but we still scared, so we're going to be in the house before 9 o'clock anyway, like you said.
Home in time for the news.
Yeah, we're going to be there at 9. You know, it's not, we don't have any 4 o'clock joints on the south side anymore anyway. So 9 o'clock is good for all us seniors.
Used to be if it wasn't daylight when you finished your evening, you didn't really have.
You didn't really party hard if the sun
that's
wasn't
true.
coming up when you left, going to the house.
That's true. That's true.
She still like to bring it home at 3 in the morning. Oh, ho is right. So now I would like for everyone to please give a warm hand for Miss Emma, for Maxine, Michael Evans. Next to him is Ed Eubanks. Arthur Gillespie is clapping his hands, and after that is his buddy from the Sandbox, Bill Jarvis, related to Maxine. Maggie Brown saying thank you so much.